Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So Joe Biden has announced his 2024 re-election bid with a new advertisement saying he's going to finish the job of apparently screwing over the American people, I guess. But I will say this, all jokes aside, I don't think that we need to underestimate Biden. Republicans will make this mistake from time to time at underestimating their opposition, myself included. And I think that it's important to note that we will likely be in for a very close election. Democrats, regardless of Biden's unpopularity, they're going to do everything they can to get as many ballots in the ballot box by election day, because Republicans don't, in order to go out there and win and get Biden that second term. And while Republicans can attack Biden effectively on a lot of things during his presidency, in order to defeat him, they're going to need to do more than that. And I will discuss what needs to happen, 5 major things that need to happen in this video for Joe Biden to lose re-election in 2024. So without further ado, we're going to dive into it with the first step of this process, which starts now. It starts before the general election process, and that is that we need to unite our party behind one candidate. And we know that Donald Trump has been polling at around 50-60% of the vote ever since he left office for the 2024 Republican nomination. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has seen a surge recently in the polls, or I guess you would say after the midterms, which politically speaking were not the best thing to happen for Donald Trump, even if it was not really his fault. But still, DeSantis was surging. He went from about 20% in the polls, and Trump was up in the 60s, to 35% in the polls, and Trump in some polls dropped below 50, and maybe there were a couple of national polls that had DeSantis ahead, but those were still outliers. But now that has all changed, especially post-indictment, and Donald Trump is there. In the latest Emerson poll, Emerson was better than most in the primaries in 2022. They weren't that solid in the general in some places, but really nobody was that solid in the general when it comes to polling. But still, in the primaries, they weren't that awful. And Donald Trump has taken a commanding 62-16 lead in the primary today, to the point where it's like, why would DeSantis want to run? He is somebody who was in the good graces of Donald Trump's base for quite some time. And a lot of people saw him as the eventual successor, whether in 2024 if Trump didn't run, or in 2028 if Trump ran and won, and then he would have another 8 years as president. But apparently he has thrown that all away, potentially for a presidential run. It's not confirmed that he has announced his run, but a lot of people are speculating that he is going to announce in May. And if he does, it's just going to divide the party. The GOP establishment is going to throw millions upon millions of dollars into this effort to oust Trump in a primary, and it's not going to work because they still don't fully grasp the concept of national electoral politics, and they keep taking the wrong takeaways from every election loss, and it's going to bite them in the rear end, mainly because Ron DeSantis can't win a primary. So why not unify behind Donald Trump right now so he has the greatest chance in the general election at defeating Joe Biden? That's the way I see it. You can't have a divided party. That was one of the major reasons for Republicans losing some key races in 2022. And it seems like the same people that are blaming Trump for the midterms are unwilling to look at those actual mechanical reasons for the underperformance, and they're not learning from their mistakes, and they're walking into something disastrous yet again. And that is true. And that's part 1 of this 5-step process. Part 2 would be using the election system to their advantage, which I talked about a little bit earlier, because Democrats do this. That is one of the reasons why they were able to go out there and hold the Senate. You look at Pennsylvania. You look at the fact that they utilize things like early voting. Republicans don't go ballot harvest. They don't push early voting in these places where there's a lot of disaffected rural voters that only typically come out for Trump. And even then, the turnout with them could be a lot higher than it is right now. And if you utilize the system while it exists, you have drop boxes, you do ballot harvest where legal, you do have early, you do have mail-ins, etc. You're not trying to find everybody at the 11th hour and crowd these polling stations, and who knows what can happen from there. So what really it comes down to is getting as many ballots in the ballot box as possible. Trump has announced the fact that he wants to do this, even though he opposes things like mail-in ballots, election month, which you should oppose on the surface of it, but you should also understand that if these things exist in certain places, they're not going to go away until you win an election with the current system. So you're going to have to use the election system to your own advantage, so you're not trying to find everyone at the last minute, so you can get out those voters. I mean, plenty of these unregistered, low-propensity, culturally conservative voters in the Midwest who didn't vote in 2020 or 2022, or in some cases have never voted, not even in 2016. They need to get registered. There needs to be an operation to register them so Donald Trump can go out there and win Wisconsin again and win Pennsylvania as well. So that's part two. Part three does have to deal with messaging, because Republicans seemingly are losing ammunition on certain issues. The issue of abortion, the people that cared about it the most typically voted Republican. However, after the whole Dobbs v. Jackson decision, it seems like that has been tilted on its head, and Republicans are running scared on the issue, and as a result, they're losing. And you can't do that on these issues. When it comes to that, you're going to have to flip the script on it. You are going to be attacked regardless on the issue. You can't run and hide. You have to go on offense. What do you say? Look at my opponent. Look at their stance on the issue. They want late-term, partial birth abortion to be legal, etc. And again, you need to drum up that ammunition among the pro-life side of the base, because you had that before going for you, and you don't. And that's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court was lost in the state of Wisconsin. Democrats were fired up on the issue of abortion. Republicans ran and they hit on the issue. Dan Kelly wouldn't talk about it, and he did so poorly. It's like, I'm not asking him to go out there and say ban it, no exceptions, because that's not electorally positive for any Republican to do, especially in a state like Wisconsin. However, you can't run and hide on the issue either, because that's not electorally beneficial for you. And it's not just the issue of abortion. Republicans were losing the issue of education for years and years, and then Glenn Youngkin comes along, talks about ending indoctrination, parents' rights in schools, and then he flips the D+10 state of Virginia by 2 points over a former governor who was well established in the state. Yes, he wasn't that likable, but that's beside the point. You look at an issue like education, that can change. You're going to have to flip the script on more issues. What about college costs? What about healthcare? Where is the healthcare plan? Because that's a big one. If Donald Trump puts out a healthcare plan that is halfway decent, I believe that he would be the clear favorite in this election. And you're going to have to talk about things like college costs. You're going to have to appeal to those younger voters, because right now, Democrats have a bad plan. Republicans have no plan. But a bad plan is better than no plan. You're going to have to answer to these issues. And there are very economically conservative, in some cases, ways to do it, but they're not really touching base on it. And as a result, they're losing more and more support as time goes on, especially among these newer, younger voters that Democrats are chasing and that they're turning out. And that's what it comes down to. Also, part 4 of defeating Joe Biden, you have to compare and contrast Trump's presidency to his. And this is true. Biden's approval rating is in the gutter. And he hit his low point in the summer, and then he tapped into the emergency oil reserves, and then he went up a little bit. And there was even a time where he was peaking. He was only -5 and change. However, now he's down to -11, and he's falling. The economy is not really in the best shape. Inflation is still ridiculously through the roof. You look at gas prices, they're on the upswing again. The economy, foreign affairs, Biden's foreign policy, crime is through the roof. You name it. Every single issue, Donald Trump's presidency was better in every single way, especially those economic metrics. And a supermajority of Americans approved of Trump's job on the economy before COVID hit. and it looked like Trump was headed to a very easy re-election victory. Then things kind of changed there. But what we do know is now you have the nostalgia factor to use for it because you have a slow economic recovery out of COVID. You're paying people not to work. You're having inflation go through the roof, and that is a problem. So when it comes down to Trump's messaging down the stretch in the campaign trail, you're going to have to compare and you're going to have to contrast the two. And if you just hammer that home enough, that could be enough to get enough swing voters on your side because they do exist. And yes, it's better to focus on policy and issues than past grievances or things that people just don't care about as well. You know, we could talk about Biden's cognitive ability as something that it doesn't really help him among voters, but you look at John Fetterman, you look at Biden in 2020, I don't think enough voters care about that for it to be a deterring factor. So you could use it as a little subtle jab here and there, but that can't entirely be the focus of the entire campaign because you just compare the issues, you compare the track records. That should be enough. And in terms of past grievances, a lot of people don't care about 2020 at this point, whether they agree with Trump on the issue or not, to the point where it's like mentioning it every rally or every 5 seconds is not something that is going to help you. And Trump isn't doing that. His critics are going to go out there and say, all Trump talks about is 2020. And then you look at what he's talking about at his rallies, and then that's obviously not true. So they pick apart something else. But obviously, yes, there has to be more to the campaign than just I was wronged, elect me again, because there are other issues. But Trump is talking about them. So on that point, he's on the right track there. So this is part 5. This deals with purely electoral strategy, which I'm going to pull the map up here. This is the floor. And also the ceiling. This is going to be a razor-thin election. I don't believe that Trump is losing North Carolina, not going to lose Texas, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, etc. Actually, we can move Maine second. Yeah, there we go. And Nebraska's second back. So actually, this is the correct map here. But what we do know is this election will be won through these 5 states, and you're going to have to place these rally locations effectively, and it's going to have to be strategic. And we know that. You don't need to waste time in Ohio like we saw last time, or Iowa, or Florida even at this point. And if you want to target Georgia, which again, you can win with Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I think that somehow if DeSantis gets the nomination, he can't win Pennsylvania. He is not the favorite in Wisconsin, but if he was going to win, he would have to win through Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, whereas Trump can win through just Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. But if you go to Georgia, you can't not go to Atlanta. Trump didn't go to Atlanta for a major rally down the stretch in 2020. And if you want to target Arizona, you have to go to the eastern suburbs of Maricopa County. You have to chase those voters in the population centers of those swing states, barnstorm Nevada, spend a lot of time in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. We didn't see like a ridiculous amount of time spent in those states in 2020. We saw, honestly, more time spent in places like Iowa or Ohio. Those states are going to come home for you regardless. You got to focus on chasing those voters in the 5 states that are going to be the most razor-thin states. And if you can't win Ohio and Iowa, you're not going to win Wisconsin anyways. So that's beside the point. What I will say is you can't waste too much time in the wrong places. Don't spend energy pandering to groups you're not going to win. We saw a lot of energy from Trump pandering to suburban women, black voters, etc., and he got like 1% more of the black vote and totally bombed with suburban women. So groups you're losing or that are not going to vote for you under any circumstance, there's no real reason wasting energy. You have to go after that white working class base. Turn out the voters you need in the states you need for them to turn out for you. And that way you'll maximize your electoral output for success. So that's the 5-point strategy right here. Just going through it again. Unite the party, use the election system to your advantage, flip the script on key issues, compare and contrast the 2 presidencies, and focus on a limited state strategy with strategically placed rallies and events. And that's what it comes down to, guys. So anyways, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.